Hello, my name is Ann Barnhardt, and I'm the person who says the things that everyone else is too terrified to say. This is the speech that I was going to deliver in Boston today, May 15, 2011, had a facility been available to me. Unfortunately, no facilities were willing to host my speech sponsored by Rabbi John Houseman because I was deemed to be hateful, bigoted, and potentially violent. Well, we'll see about that. In this speech, we're going to cover a lot of intellectual and theological ground. I tend to set my goals extremely high, and this speech is no exception. I hope to fully explain the relationship between Christians and Jews in today's world and show that we, and really all people of civilization and goodwill, are allied in a war of survival against satanic evil manifested today by Islam and Marxism. I'm also going to show how our fundamental human rights, as codified in the Constitution of the United States, flow directly out of the Judeo-Christian milieu and the Bible. I will then contrast this to the Marxist-Islamist paradigm and show that Marxism and Islam are actually cut from exactly the same philosophical cloth. Finally, I will discuss my personal three-point tactical plan that I will carry out should the proverbial poop hit the proverbial fan. My three-point plan serves not only as a system of engagement, but it simultaneously rebuts any and all accusations of intolerance, bigotry, and hatefulness. And I aim to do all of this in less than 30 minutes. Like I said, I'm a very high goal setter. The first concept we need to tackle is that of the relationship between Judaism and Christianity. There is a tremendous amount of confusion, ambiguity, and bigotry flowing in both directions. There are plenty of anti-Semitic Christians who think that the Jews are the accursed killers of Christ. There are also plenty of Jews who think that Christianity despises them as a point of intrinsic doctrine. Both are completely wrong, and it's high time that someone stepped up and explained the relationship clearly and without mincing any words. And I think I'm the person to do that. The fact of the matter is this: you show me an anti-Semitic Christian, and I'll show you a Christian who is completely and totally clueless about his faith. Sadly, in this day and age, most Christians are exactly that, clueless. And that goes for everyone: Catholic, Protestant, non-denominational, all of them. If we look at the church from an intellectual standpoint, it has already been reduced down to just a mere remnant. There are so many heresies active today that it would take a lifetime to define them all individually. So I have named them corporately. What the church suffers from today is the heresy of stupidity. Now, everyone listen up. Jew, Christian, atheist, everyone. The foundational premise of the Jewish people and of Israel is that Israel is the representative proxy for humanity. This is why the Jews are called the chosen people, because they are. God chose Israel to stand in representation of all people everywhere. This is an honor, but it is a taxing and dubious honor due to the fall of Adam and Eve and the inherent tendency that all people have for sin, which is called concupiscence. God chose Israel to stand at the fore of humanity and be the people with whom the historical narrative of salvation history is played out. This began with a married couple, Adam and Eve, and then expanded to a family unit through Noah. Then the expansion moved to the tribal level through Abraham, then the national level through Moses, and then to the level of a kingdom through David. And finally, in the fullness of time, the expansion moved beyond Israel to cover all people everywhere through Jesus Christ. But the only way to fully understand God's relationship with us as individuals is to understand God's interaction with Israel through history. We see in the Old Testament a continuous pattern of Israel falling away from God in sin and God taking Israel back, many times after a required chastisement to make Israel fully appreciate the gravity of its sin. God says to Israel over and over again that he will never, ever forsake his covenant. God uses the imagery of marriage to make Israel understand that the relationship between God and Israel is not a mere legalistic contract. It is a covenant sealed in flesh. The covenant cannot be broken. It can be abused by one of the partners, namely humanity, but it can never be broken. God does not walk out. God does not get divorced. He always has been and always will be ready and willing to take us back, forgive our indiscretions and betrayals, if we will only turn back to Him. He did it with Israel after the unfortunate incident with the golden calf at the foot of Mount Sinai. He did it after the numerous phases in which Israel had bad kings and fell into idolatry and immorality. He did it with King David after David's sins of the flesh, and they were numerous. The exuberant joy of the honeymoon period after Israel's return to God was put into words by Solomon in the Song of Songs. The image of the rocky trials of marriage and the marriage relationship was put into writing by the prophet Hosea. Every macro image of Israel presented in the Bible maps perfectly to the micro context of the individual. Every sin committed by Israel corporately is a sin that I have personally committed as an individual. The worshiping of idols, the failure to trust in God's provision, the hypocrisy, the sins of the flesh, all of them, every single one, they all map precisely to me as an individual and to each and every human being. And now we move into the New Testament. There are many verses in which Jesus soundly and harshly rebukes the Jews and the Pharisees. Knowing now as we do that Israel is standing in our personal stead as the proxy representatives of humanity as a whole and of us as individuals, we need to read these words of Christ as chastisements and critiques of us individually and personally, not as a critique or condemnation of a third party. When Christ says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites," He's speaking directly to me. Woe to you, Anne, you hypocrite. When Christ says, "You are like whitewashed tombs, which appear beautiful on the outside, but inside are full of dead men's bones and every kind of filth," He's speaking directly to me. I am the serpent. I am the brood of vipers. I am the liar. And if I may be so bold, so is every one of you. And the more a person thinks that Jesus is speaking not to them, but only to the Jews, and then considers themselves able to sit in seething hatred of the Jews, the further from Christ they actually are. The people who read Jesus' words as exclusive to Jews aren't in the right ballpark. They aren't even in the right galactic cluster. This is the heresy of stupidity in full bloom. Now to 10 of the most beautiful words in the New Testament. Every Jew watching this has heard these words and probably has shuddered every time they heard them. These 10 words have been twisted by stupid, ignorant people to justify horrific acts of evil against the Jews for 1,978 years and counting. And many of these people have claimed to be pious Christians. Well, we're going to fix this deal once and for all. The 10 most beautiful words are, "Let His blood be upon us and upon our children." These are the 10 words shouted by the Jewish crowd to Pontius Pilate as he was sentencing Jesus. I repeat these words internally at every Mass because these are the words that give hope to humanity. These are the words that open the gates of heaven. These words are the means by which our salvation is accomplished.